Joining us now is a Democratic congressman from the state of Washington, Adam Smith. He is the ranking member on the House Armed Services Committee. Adam, thank you so much for being here, Congressman. President Biden mentioned Iran by name and warned them to be careful. Defense Secretary Austin is in Tel Aviv today. We've seen a buildup of military resources. We've heard Secretary Austin say, do not try to take advantage of this. What's the concern here when it comes to possible third parties getting involved?
Well, we have a presence in the region in a number of areas, and there are a number of pieces of the area that are unstable. Iran has been actively trying to destabilize Iraq. They have militias in Syria as well, and obviously they're very involved with Hezbollah in Lebanon. They could potentially attack U.S. forces in the region. They could take further efforts to destabilize Iraq. They could encourage Hezbollah to attack Israel from the north. All of that is what we want to discourage. And of course, we also want to be in a position to defend our forces in the region if those attacks come. And we're working with other regional partners as well. King Abdullah in Jordan. I know Secretary Blinken is in Qatar today. All trying to calm the situation and make sure that this war doesn't expand.
Have you seen any credible threats of third parties trying to jump in or make a move to take advantage of this situation so far?
Yeah, well, certainly you've seen some skirmishes up north between Hezbollah and the Israeli Defense Forces. That has started to happen. It hasn't expanded yet, but that certainly has started to happen. Other than that, at this point, no.
Yeah. We have seen how quickly things can change. 1 week ago, it was relatively quiet in the Middle East, and Israel and Saudi Arabia were on a path to normalizing relations. What's the expectation for the coming days?
People are really nervous about it because you described the situation accurately. Now, thus far, all the right things are basically being said coming out of Saudi Arabia. In particular, they're still committed to finding a way forward for a peace process with Israel. They haven't backed away from that. But as this war continues, there is a risk of that being jeopardized, depending on what happens in Gaza and how various people react to it. I mean, look, this has always been one of the biggest problems in the Middle East, and that is resolving the Palestinian question and resolving the Palestinian territories. What we really need is a viable Palestinian state. Unfortunately, extremist groups like Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and others are more interested in wiping Israel off the map than they are in building a viable Palestinian state. And that has created no end of conflict in trying to get this situation contained and to protect the civilians in the area, Palestinians and Israelis alike.
Mm-hmm. We've heard from the administration, no boots on the ground, at least not right now. How close is the United States to engaging in ways other than moral and financial support?
Yeah, we're not. There isn't really a scenario whereby the U.S. would use our military personnel in the fight that Israel is engaged in with Hamas or with Hezbollah, for that matter. Similar to Ukraine, we're not putting U.S. boots on the ground. We're assisting an ally, and that's the situation I think that will remain in Israel. The only possible exception to that would be very isolated actions to rescue hostages in Gaza, where we would use our special forces who are specifically trained in those sort of rescue missions. And that seems very unlikely. First of all, we'd have to find those hostages, know where they were, and have an actual plan for that to work. And second of all, Israel is very good at hostage rescue themselves. So our actual presence might not be required. But we are not going to war and sending our troops in as part of this fight between Israel and Hamas.
Let's turn our attention to Washington for just a moment. Right now, the House of Representatives has no speaker and is unable to work on any actual legislation, including aid for Israel or Ukraine. How dangerous is it as Republicans keep trying to fix what they did themselves, and what options are on the table to actually get that aid to these countries that need it?
Yeah, it's not good. And also, by the way, our own government has until November 17th, and then we will shut down if we don't do something in terms of funding the government and keeping it going. And we need to pass appropriations bills for fiscal year 24. I mean, a continuing resolution is just a stopgap measure that is particularly harmful to the Department of Defense in terms of them being able to have a clear budget for the fiscal year that we are currently in. It's a chaotic situation. And look, you know, the Republican dysfunction has been building for a very long time. And basically what it is they've got a group of people who seem to think that they have to get their way or they burn everything down. I mean, that's just not the way democracies work. The Republicans have a narrow majority, but typically they pick who their choice is for speaker, and then they all line up behind them. They're not doing that. Now, that level of chaos is very damaging to the country and damaging to the House, and it is a reflection of how the Republican Party has been more or less taken over by far-right MAGA extremists, and forgive me for putting it this way, what can only be referred to as the Trump cult. They care more about that than they do about an actual functioning U.S. government at a time of really important crises all across the world, Israel, Ukraine, but certainly here at home as well. You know, we have, as they keep pointing out, a crisis on the border, and we do. We need a fully functional government to deal with that. And again, we need to fund the government. That very basic task is something that too many Republicans in the House seem to think is unimportant.
Washington Congressman Adam Smith, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.